The Life of a Building, Ottawa Art Gallery, July 2021 to July 2022 by Greta Grip and Lee Jones. So the Greta Grip, that's me. I had this vision about this open source knitting machine that was made by two artists in Europe, Vivara and Mar, and they made this open source, this 3D knitting machine, and they used it for different projects they had. But at the same time, when I saw this knitting machine, I saw the new building of the Ottawa Art Gallery, and I adored it. It was a tall building. There's lots of stairs and elevators and different rooms and outdoor space and indoor spaces. And I really thought the two would work well. And I really thought, wouldn't it be neat to have this knitting machine in Ottawa Art Gallery, and it would be life of a building, and my idea would be sensors on different stairs and different doors, and so you'd be capturing people moving in and out of the different spaces, and this machine would stitch as it goes. And that's where I left it for a while. And then I met Lee Jones and I told her about this concept idea I had. And Lee said simply, I can do that. And our friendship had been born at that time, actually. And then several years later, I was approached by the Ottawa Art Gallery for another project, and I pitched this knitting project, and they loved it, and they commissioned this machine to be made, and it was really good timing. And Lee can explain that.
So the idea with this knitting machine is to turn data into something tangible. So instead of it being some number in a chart, we can have it as this physical object. So with this and the return of Art Gallery's opening at the end of stage 3, the Ottawa Art Gallery commissioned us to make this interactive artwork that would respond to people coming back into the building and engaging with the OAG again. So this installation was motivated by the pandemic context with a desire to document the pandemic recovery year from July 2021 to July 2022. In particular, the Ottawa Art Gallery was interested in using the knitting machine as a way of visualizing the return to the gallery, so measuring that time after museums and galleries were allowed to reopen. Here we are doing the installation. So this was the first time we were able to go to the Ottawa Art Gallery again. And in response to the pandemic, there were restrictions in place that wouldn't have been around normally. So things like only having one entrance to the building when normally you can access the OAG through multiple entry points. So we adapted the original idea to these unique constraints and to make a really site-specific work for this unique time. So we built this entire thing during the pandemic where Greta was in her house with the machine and I was in my house with the sensor that would activate it. And I was moving in front of the sensor at my house and it was knitting a row at Greta's house. So it was perfect for this strange time of the pandemic. So the way the installation worked was there was a motion sensor at the one entrance of the building. And when someone walked in, the sensor would communicate wirelessly with the knitting machine and it would stitch a row of stitches. And the way the sensor works is similar to a bat ear in that it sends out a sound that we can't hear. And then when someone or something is in front of the sensor, the sound that returns changes. So in this way, we weren't tracking individuals in any kind of invasive way, but rather just measuring that movement as individuals walk into the building. So once people came in and the machine started knitting their row, the OAG made this really awesome wayfinding signage to then guide people through the building to the knitting machine. So the project in this way also encouraged individuals to follow a path through the building. So there were little yarn cones on the floor guiding individuals from the sensor to the knitting machine. And the machine stitched a row for each individual coming in. But the main design decision was to change the color of the yarn each month so that we could then compare the ebbs and flows of people coming in and how this changed month to month. So at the end of each month, we had this ritual of coming back to the OAG and changing the yarn and also seeing how the stitches built up. On top of the physical interaction of measuring people walking into the space, we also added a virtual element. So due to the hybrid nature of the reopening, where some individuals, still felt uncomfortable, preferred not going to public spaces, we created an online component to the installation. So on the OAG's website, there was a microsite where individuals could click a button during gallery opening hours, and then they could watch the knitting machine stitch their row through the YouTube live stream. This is us setting up the live stream. So the OAG put a webcam on the ceiling. And then this created direct online interaction where folks could click the button and then in real time watch their row being created. So this was our attempt to learn from the pandemic and the ways that virtual was at times more inclusive and expanded participation beyond just the local area. So now the audience could include folks who were interested in the Ottawa Art Gallery but weren't yet comfortable or couldn't access in person. The OAG made a really wonderful video of the process. So here's a bit of the behind the scenes of the installation. So at the end of the year, we had this wonderful pile of stitches representing the months of visitors. And at first we expected it to increase and increase month to month. But that's not what happened. As we all know, there were more lockdowns, and in Ottawa especially, you can see where local events had an impact on visitation. So January and February especially only have a few rows of stitching. Another aspect of the work is my occupation as a researcher at Queen's University, and I study textile fabrication and technology. So along with the artwork, we also ran a study on how people made sense of the installation, and we've been able to learn from this iteration of the work. So for example, we learned about how individuals want to see the knitted data stretched out in order to make sense of it. And this has informed how it's currently installed at the OAG.
And more recently, we've been invited to install the tube, its colorful tube, in the exact same spot that the machine was in. So it's lovely to have this up. It's up right now, and it's beautiful. The colors are wonderful, and it's kind of reminding us of that past year, maybe the ups and downs, and how our lives had changed. And I'm looking forward to hearing. I know Lee will do another study, and I'm looking forward to hearing what the visitors will interpret it now that you can see all the colors.
We've also learned from our OAG project in other ways as well. So one thing that came up in our study is the ways that individuals wanted context on the data. So for our current iteration of the project at the Mississippi Valley Textile Museum and at Critical Mass in Port Hope, we've added blank stitch markers where individuals can annotate the data saying, I was here, or adding their own memories to the knitted record. So each time we iterate on this project in a new location, we take the insights from the previous ones. And we're also interested in exploring other types of data by, for example, using different types of sensors and doing site-specific iterations.
Lee and I would like to thank the Ottawa Art Gallery for all their support, for letting us dream big, and for being the most fun place to work with. And where we really appreciate them commissioning the machine, believing in us, and believing in the project. And if you ever want to get in touch with us, there's our emails. And we're always open for discussions of different types of ways of using our machines.